Hey, I'm gonna try to cram a lot into this video. It's about hunting for food, all right? Being as practical as you can get. This isn't about getting antlers on the wall. This isn't about, having fun and the enjoyment of the process. This is about getting meat in your freezer or meat in your house so you can can it or whatever. That'll be part 3. But part 1 is about getting meat. First off, you need good clothes that will keep you warm, will protect you from the environment. It's a fairly warm morning this morning, but I still have a pretty thick jacket here. I keep having to take it off because I'm breaking a sweat. Now this jacket is not a high dollar Cabela's camouflage. It works. You can probably tell it sticks out like a sore thumb against what I'm standing against. In fact, I might be better off just wearing this plain t-shirt. However, you notice the brown that I'm wearing. If I just walked around in this brown, I pose the risk of being shot by another hunter. So you do have to keep that in mind, what colors you're wearing. Of course, by law, in most states, you're required to wear blaze orange during gun season. But here's the thing, you don't need to be wearing high dollar camouflage. You could even be wearing a plaid shirt, as long as it breaks up your outline, all right? Breaks up your outline, and it's about the same tint as what is around you. Because here's the thing, deer are mostly colorblind. They can see different shades of brown and greens, but that shirt right there would probably work just fine. So don't feel like you've got to go buy a whole wardrobe for this. You need pants that are going to protect you from briars. You need good boots. That'll be another video. You do need a way to cover your face. Your skin shines, especially in lower light situations when the deer are moving. So good pair of gloves. This is a face mask. You need to have that cover. Now, now that you have that gear, you need a weapon that is going to be able to put a deer down quickly and efficiently. And so I'm going to demonstrate one that I have that I've been using. This is something that I have built over time, piece by piece. That is why I like the modular sporting rifle system. I'm not going to use the other term because it's so politically charged, and it's so, who knows, might get this video flagged or something. But and I'll have another video on this model rifle eventually. But what I like about this is that it can carry a high capacity magazine as needed. Now, usually I try to take one shot per deer, but the reality is sometimes you need more than one shot, especially if you're trying to get meat for the freezer. Now, most people just assume this caliber that this rifle is normally chambered in is too light. This is a different caliber than the military uses. This is a 6.5 Grendel, so specialty round. It has come down in price over the years, and is something that can be reloaded. Is equivalent kind of between a 243 Winchester and a 308 Winchester. Is kind of in between those two calibers, but it fits in this smaller package. So this rifle is very lightweight. I can carry it long distances. It does have a longer barrel than normal. It has a higher powered scope. So I'm able to have sub MOA accuracy with this rifle. That means at 100 yards, this rifle is capable of keeping bullets within 1 inch at 100 yards. I know some of you who know more about this than I do, you're going to say that's wrong. Just generally speaking, that's the standard of deviation. So that means if you have a 1 MOA rifle at 300 yards, you're going to have 3 inches of variation, including the drop in ballistics. Now, you don't need to know all of that to go hunting. Generally, most deer are harvested standing between 50 and 100 yards, I've heard, and that's true for me. But this rifle is capable of reaching out to 400 or 500 yards and having effective accuracy and stopping power to take a deer. Now, I've not killed a deer that far. I've not had an opportunity that I felt was ethical to make that kind of a shot. But I have taken them out past 300 with this gun. So Also, when it comes to building a firearm, it generally can be cheaper. You can buy the parts over time. It's a fun hobby, but here's the other thing. In a survival situation long term, I know how to fix this gun, and I have spare parts so that I can quickly fix this gun and keep it operational, keep it moving. Notice I did the poor man's camo. I used some spray paint. There's all kinds of videos on YouTube on that. And generally this is gonna blend in with most of the environment that I'm in, but basically the paint's to cut down on the shine, and I gotta repaint my muzzle brake up here. But this has been an effective game getting tool. Now, one more thing about caliber. A lot of people would say that even this caliber is not strong enough for a deer. All depends on where you're hunting and how big the deer are hunting, or you are hunting. The deer that I'm shooting are on average about 100 pounds. That's, you know, a nice sized buck might get up to 175. You know, and a medium-sized doe might be more around 80 or 90 pounds. But generally that 100-pound weight size, you know, this caliber, in my experience, will do the trick. Now, here's the thing. There's two philosophies. One is put 2 holes in a deer. That way you have a good blood trail if the deer runs off. And that can be very important. But for a caliber to put 2 holes in a deer all the way through a deer's body, it's gonna kick. Now, I'm not afraid of kick, but I usually cannot watch the deer's reaction when I'm handling the recoil of a rifle and have a muzzle flash in my face. So this caliber, I'm generally able to watch the bullet impact the deer, or the deer's reaction to the bullet impact through the scope. And because this is a semi-automatic rifle, I'm able to take a follow-up shot if necessary. Now, of course, with this smaller caliber, I don't always get 2 holes in a deer. I get 1 hole. And I found that to be somewhat effective, especially with ballistic tip ammunition. I always gravitate to Hornady SST ammo. It's 123 grains. And generally speaking, probably 90% of my kills with that setup, the deer is dropped on the spot. It's been, I think SST stands for static shock something. So again, know what you're going to use, have experience with it, practice with it, have a method to your madness, but also don't just necessarily run and grab the first rifle off the shelf at your local Walmart. You know what you're getting, know what you're getting into. There's also something to be said for, you know, if you're hunting before a survival scenario, it's kind of like practice. And that's kind of how I view this. This is practice for a difficult time, difficult situation. And so practicing with what you might have to use to defend your life if things get really tough is important. So we'll talk about that in another video. All right, time to recap this morning's hunt. I'll have a few little clips after this one to kind of show what I'm talking about, but I didn't film the actual hunt. I'm kind of glad I didn't. It was a little embarrassing. I had a herd of 8 does step out on the path about 120 yards from me. Not a difficult shot, but in fact, I was a little confident, a little overly confident. I picked out the biggest doe, pulled the trigger. They all scattered. I couldn't tell for sure if I had hit that doe, but honestly, I was so confident with my shooting abilities that I just assumed that that doe was down. A little while later, I gave it some time. Another doe stepped out on the path, probably from that same group. And so it was a little further down the path, about 140 yards. And so I took a second shot. And she acted really strange. I don't know if I hit her on that shot or not, but she ran towards me and gave me one more quick shot before she stepped off the path. So I took the second opportunity. I don't know if I hit her that first time or the second time, but I'm pretty sure that is the deer that I have recovered right here. So I walked down, was looking for blood, couldn't find blood anywhere. I couldn't find either deer at first. I heard some does blowing their alarm sound. It's kind of a kind of sound. And I could just see them through about 100 yards down a path. And so I started easing towards them, and I'm glad I did. And I kind of learned something new today, that sometimes, especially when does are in a herd like that, they'll stick together even with a doe that is dead. And so basically they were standing right next to this dead deer, and I got close enough I could see it. But ironically, there was no blood trail that I could find in the wet leaves between where I shot the second deer and where it was laying. So then I eased back out to the path and I started looking for the first deer. Couldn't find anything. Couldn't find hair in the path. Couldn't find blood. Tried to find, started doing semicircles out into the woods. Couldn't find anything. I started walking some grids strategically, like just straight lines. And then I move over, like 20 yards or so, about as far as you can see in the woods, and then walk the straight line back and try to do a grid off the whole section. I did find a heavily used deer trail that had some green material. I'll probably have a little clip of it in just a minute. It's really gross. And I thought maybe that was gut matter, that maybe I had shot this deer poorly and that it was gut shot. So I eased out, gave it about an hour or so, and I went back in quietly. And when I found the that spot again, I followed the trail more. Eventually determined I don't think that's what that was. I think it was just some deer poop that had been smeared around on the leaves by a deer walking by. I found no evidence that I had hit that first deer. So I got one deer, and I'm about to show a little bit of how to skin it. Another thing that I'm a little embarrassed about, but I came out here unprepared. I didn't have a cooler. I didn't have bags, freezer bags. Didn't have any kind of container to put the deer meat in. So I had to run to the store and pick some of that stuff up. So I picked up one of the things that I found to be most useful, at least for me, and that is these, I think they're Rubbermaid brand tubs. What's nice about these is they nest together well. They can be easily cleaned, they're dishwasher safe, they can be frozen, and they also nest nicely in my cooler. So now I'm gonna put the meat in here and run it straight to a refrigerator at my house. But if I had to put it on ice, I could put the meat in here, put it in the cooler on top of ice without getting the meat wet, because I don't age my deer meat that way. So was able to get those. Let me go ahead and kind of show you this, if kind of viewer discretion advised. So we have this nice deer hanging station. You don't have to use one of these in order to clean a deer. You can do it on the ground, but it's much more messy. It's much more difficult. So if you have the ability to spread the legs, the hind legs of the deer out, you can see where I've punctured a hole right here between the ligament and the leg bone that these kind of big coat hanger hooks into. All right, and this is, there's probably other methods for doing this, but I'm going to cut, put the knife blade in right here and kind of strip up to here. I'm not going to be able to do it on film because I can't hold the camera and do it at the same time. And I'm going to go up to here, and I'm going to slowly start peeling the skin back. And I'll try to get a little bit of that on footage in just a moment. But basically, you've got to just start pulling the skin down off the deer. And when I get the skin pulled all the way down below the front shoulders, because I do want to keep these front shoulders, that's when we'll start cutting the meat off. I know many of hunters will usually start with gutting a deer. Let me go ahead and explain really quick. unless you have to carry a deer a long ways, kind of on your own. If it's a small deer, there's really no need to gut it. Now, in a survival situation, are there things in a deer's guts that you could use? Yes. The heart is an edible muscle. A deer this size, the heart is not going to be really big enough to really make a big meal, at least. So I'm not gutting this deer. But if it was a survival situation, I would gut this deer. I would get the heart. I would probably get the liver. You have to drain the liver. A lot of work goes into that, and you have to, cook it a certain way. Also, the only other meat that gutting a deer exposes is what's called the tenderloins, and it's these two little straps. Even on a large buck here in the southern United States, tenderloin is just about that big. Now, it's a really good cut of meat, but to go through the whole process of gutting the deer, I mean, you have to really want, 10 mouthfuls of meat. So I'm not gutting this deer today. I thought about it for demonstration purposes. There are other great YouTube videos on doing that, and maybe someday I'll do one, but right now I'm not going to do that. We're going to focus on getting this deer skinned and getting the usable meat off of it as quickly as we can. All right, so I'm going to try this hands-free for just a moment. So I've made those cuts. I'm pulling down the skin. As I did so, I made a pretty crazy discovery, and that was the bullet entered the deer here, which was a decent, I guess it definitely caught the lung, but then somehow the bullet wound up all the way up here. When I peeled the skin back, this bullet fell on the ground. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see the mushroom. That's what the bullet's designed to do, to kind of deliver the most impact. But then as I'm pulling this down, basically I'm using gravity, I'm pulling tight against there, and using the tip and the belly of the knife blade to cut those membranes to pull the skin away from the rest of the body. And I'll turn this back on in just a minute when we get the meat exposed. All right, so 3 basic chunks of meat that we're going to get off on both sides of the deer. I'll do them in pieces. First one is going to be this front shoulder. Notice I've already cut the leg, the lower part of the leg off. I don't want this part where the bullet went in, so I'm going to kind of cut around that. But from here on out, I'm really not cutting through any bones. I'm just cutting the tendons, and the front shoulder will come right off. I don't have enough battery life to do the whole thing, so I'm going to do this front shoulders first. I'll go ahead and explain this other part. So make a zip right here along the spine on either side. This is sometimes called the tenderloin, but it's actually the back strap, and it's a big chunk of meat that goes all the way down to here, and basically you make a cut up here and just peel it off slowly, and it comes right off either side of the spine. And then finally we'll be cutting off the hams of both legs, the hindquarters. Again, my battery's probably going to die, and so I gotta get this done because it's a little too warm out here to keep this deer hanging too much longer. So I'll try to explain more once I'm done. Thanks. Behind the lung, maybe I clipped the lung. I think I did, because there was blood on the deer's mouth, but there was already gut matter in that entry wound, and then you saw the exit was not really an exit. Actually, the bullet stopped under the skin on the back ham. Thought, when did I hit that deer? And after replaying the whole thing through my mind, that shot that killed that deer was the second shot at the second doe. That's the only way that angle works. And I said, what happened? So I just came out here, finally got a chance to go out to the range, and I shot my rifle off a bench rest, and I proved my point. Something happened to this rifle since I shot some previous deer and made some really accurate shots. And here's just an example of that. This is actually my third shot at this target. I finally hit paper at about 150 yards. So something is loose, because from a bench I should be getting, you know, semi-close, and if this was sighted in like I had at the beginning of season, I would have a group right about here. And so I'm definitely low into the right, I guess, if you're looking at the target. Don't know if the camera has that flipped around for you, but it makes sense with the angle that the deer was running, that my bullet hit it low and back, and angled through the deer in that way. Now I share all this. This has been a really messy video, and in just a moment I'm going to have a few little clips of me trailing, showing that green material that was evidently not gut matter. At least I don't think so. You see, as I'm putting all this together, I think I completely missed the first deer. I missed the first shot on the second deer, and then somehow I just connected on that second shot, got lucky in a sense. Which does make me feel a little better that I don't have extra deer out there dead or wounded, but at the same time, you know, that's meat that I could have had in the freezer. I share all this just to say, you know, if you're enjoying this as a hobby, you can just kind of write it off and say, all right, next year I'll do better. You know, season's over now, but you know, next year I'll be fine. If it's a survival scenario where you are dependent on your skills and follow through as a hunter, to feed yourself and to feed your family, this stuff matters. This stuff matters big time. And it would be easy for me to just write off, well, you know, my gun's out of whack, it fell and the scope got, can you fix it? Do you have the tools? Do you have the skills? Do you have the ability? And that's why I do go back to this kind of rifle, modular sporting rifle, because I do have the tools and at least some of the know-how to be able to work on this and to fix this. And this is a rifle that I am constantly modifying to some degree, and I have some ideas already on what I need to do to get this up and running for next year. With all that being said, you know, you want gear that you can trust, because you're trusting your life to it in that survival situation. You know, I do want to refer back to the first part of this video where I'm talking about the caliber selection 6.5 Grendel. There are other calibers available in this modular sporting rifle. There's one I'm interested in trying, and that's the 350 Legend, just recently came out, but it has very limited range, about 200 yards, give or take. And then there's 450 Bushmaster. That's kind of the king, that and 50 Beowulf, but those get really pricey. Those cartridges themselves start costing like $2-3 a round. So I'm not trying to tell you what caliber is the best. Every one of those calibers has their specific applications. You know, I've had great success with this rifle, with this caliber setup over the years. As I said, about 90% of the deer that I make contact with drop instantly on the spot with that SST bullet. I've had different success with hollow points. Usually I get a pass through, but I don't always get a good blood trail. So, you know, these are things you do have to learn from experience. And, you know, talking to experienced hunters. And so that's one of the reasons I'm providing this whole video, just in closing before I show these final clips. You know, this whole video series is targeted to someone who's never gone hunting, and never thought through, am I able to, you know, bring meat home when it matters? You know, and for those of you who have hunted, but you just kind of do it casually, you maybe go out once a year, you've never really put the thought process into what it would be like to depend on your skills and gear as a hunter to bring home food. So I just want to challenge you with that. So I'm gonna have a clip up here of me trailing. I show a little bit of, you know, some deer trails and movement. I'm gonna have a little clip of the stand that I shot that deer from, and the kind of the setup, strategic setup, and then I'll close with a fun little clip of Luke walking to his hunting blind just a few weeks ago, and he's doing the deer walk, and I'll just go ahead and explain that real quick. So when you move through the woods, you want to move like the animals, and the deer are the ones that you usually don't, you want to mimic them so you don't spook them. And so they take little steps and then they pause. They take a few little steps and then they pause. And when deer are kind of casually moving through the woods, they don't step on sticks. Yes, they'll kind of step on leaves, but generally they're picking their way very carefully. And so you as a hunter need to do that as well. Deer can hear from very long distance away, and they will probably hear you far before they see you or you see them. They have great senses: sight, smell, hearing. So keep that in mind, and Luke's going to demonstrate that at the end of the video. Thanks for taking the time to watch this. Again, you can reach out to me via email through this channel if you have any questions. But I don't know if I'm gonna have this clip in there. One of the little clips I filmed, I said, never assume that you hit the deer or that you missed the deer. You always double check, all right? You can be so sure of yourself, so confident, and then something happens and you're without meat, and you got to kind of start over again from scratch because you just scared all the deer out of the area. So there's already a part 2 on this YouTube channel talking about taking the meat from the cooler and getting it ready for either the freezer or for the frying pan. And then there will eventually be a part 3 of some different ways to prepare meat, especially for long-term storage and survival kind of scenario. Thanks for watching. Hey, I want to give you a brief glimpse. This is one of my primary hunting setups. It's a pull row, as some in the timber industry call it, through the woods here, and we keep it mowed. You can maybe see down the way a ladder stand, and it's kind of positioned in such a way that we can see about 200 yards back up this way and about 200 yards back down that way. And so with your average capable hunting rifle that's well sighted in, you can shoot any deer that crosses in a 400-yard stretch. This is positioned in bedding area, so it's really dense cover on either side. We have some fields out that direction, and then there's an oak ridge over there that sometimes, depending on the time of year, the deer will go back and forth between those. And of course, here on the path is some green grass that's growing naturally, and so usually the deer will step out on the path as they're going between bedding, and they'll take a bite of grass, and that gives you just enough time to line up a good shot. So I'm out here looking for a doe that I shot. I thought I made a good shot on it, but just found some evidence to the contrary. Unfortunately, did not find any blood at the shot site, which with the lighter caliber that I'm using, that's not always going to be the case. But I started following some grids out here into the woods, looking mostly for deer trails. And as I was walking down one of these trails, I'll go ahead and show you. I found this right here. This spot right here looks to be a little bit of digested material, so probably came out of the deer's stomach, which I may have still made a good shot, but the bullet may have pushed some gut material out the other side, and that means I'm probably clogged up. And looking at this trail here, the deer's probably way up there laying down somewhere. Hopefully it's dead. So we're going to take this nice and slow. All right, so I've given this deer about 40 minutes from the time of the shot to expire, and so I'm going to try to go out and pick up that trail again. Now, when you're trailing a deer, you do need to move quietly, especially a deer that may have been hit in the guts, because that deer could still be alive when you get up to it. So make sure you have a weapon with you. I'm choosing not to carry my rifle through this thick brush because I don't want it to hang up in the brush. I've got a pistol instead. From experience, you want to plain Jane pistol. All right, you don't want fancy sights on it. You want something that isn't going to get hung up on the brush either. You don't want sights getting fogged in the dew and all that. Ask me how I know. Also, generally, you would want to carry some kind of a flagging with you, like flagging tape. And when you find spots of blood, you can hang that flagging up. That way you can kind of gauge the trail through the woods. Now, I forgot my flagging tape today, so I've got a blaze mark on a tree right next to. That's where I scraped some of the bark off the tree, and so I should be able to find, pick up that spot that I found earlier, and we'll keep you updated. Following this deer trail, notice that these footprints in the water are cloudy, whereas over here it's clear. So that means a deer walked through here probably within the last hour.